This intro.
Good morning and welcome to Meet Magento Indonesia.
We're looking forward to doing this again next year. Italy.
A warm virtual welcome for the third time today here at the technical room of Meet Magento 2021 Indonesia. Welcome again. I'm pretty sure there are some attendees who are coming back from the previous session, but there could be other attendees who are coming from other rooms as well. So before we begin, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Jessie and I will be your MC for today. We have been getting a lot of energy in this technical room, seeing the enthusiasm and excitement. So I'm even more excited to introduce you to the remaining two sessions we have coming up right up. I guess we can just kickstart to the first one. We have Mr. Vinai Kopp, who is a Magento trainer, developer, and consultant. Today, Mr. Kopp will be discussing and introducing you to Hyvä themes for Magento. For your information, we have a Q&A box right next to this broadcast. So if you have any questions popping up in your head already at the hear of our speaker's name or the topic for the session, just drop any of them on the Q&A box and we'll try to squeeze some of it after the presentation session. We also have a chat box, so if you want to say hi and welcome fellow attendees who are coming in, please do drop a quick message there. Well, I guess without further ado, here and now, please welcome Mr. Vinai Kopp.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for watching now or maybe later the recording. I don't know. I'm excited to be here and present today. And I'm going to talk about Hyvä. That's my new passion, right? So first of all, I would like to give a little bit of background. I'm a developer doing web development since 1998. And 2008, I did my first project with a new product called Magento. And afterwards, I really had to ask myself, do I want to continue doing this with Magento? Or do I want to just move on and start doing something else? Because it was quite a steep learning curve back then. And it wasn't something I could do just by the side. I decided to really study Magento and get good at it and learn it. And I have to say, I really fell in love with Magento, but not only Magento, but I also really fell in love with the community vibes that I discovered on conferences like this one, Meet Magento, Germany and Netherlands. Back then, those were the first, and then they spread over the world. So I really like Magento. However, a couple of years ago, around 2016, I found myself getting more and more frustrated. Magento 2 had been released, and instead of making things easier and faster, things got a bit more complex and a bit slower. And I didn't feel quite as confident anymore recommending Magento to clients, to potential clients, right? So back then I was still doing projects, working as a freelancer mainly for merchants and also some agencies, but I was also doing a lot of trainings for other Magento developers. So I still kind of felt okay doing trainings, even though I didn't feel quite as comfortable with it as before. Then the community engineering effort started, which was great. I really loved the idea of formalizing community contributions and how they get into the core. But unfortunately, that didn't really turn out the way I had hoped it would because of the whole points system. It seemed like many people were only contributing because of the points and started gaming. So it kind of took away the spirit of open source for me. And I wasn't that satisfied after all. So to be frank, I started shopping around. I was looking at other platforms like Shopify, Shopware, BigCommerce, some others. But I wasn't really getting super enthusiastic about them because I found, they're just another shop system. They also have things that they do well and things they don't do that well. Some things shine and are easy, some things are more difficult. So I didn't really feel like throwing away this big investment, 10 years of my life that I put into Magento, learning it, mastering it, becoming good at it, having fun with it, making friends around it. So what happened next was, in October last year, 2020, Willem Wigman did a presentation on a conference called Reacticon. It was an online conference because of COVID. And at first, I wasn't really convinced that would be anything interesting there, but I heard people talking about it. So I watched the recording afterwards on YouTube. And what he said there really started to make sense to me. He basically picked me up where I was. All this feeling of Magento builds getting more and more complex and more expensive and more enterprise and not really relevant for the people that I usually work with. So yeah, I gave it a try, this Hyvä theme that he had created that really focused on simplicity and performance, and I fell in love again. So this idea of a theme that takes away all the stuff that isn't good about the Magento front end, but keeps everything that is good. And the results are amazing. Well, I'll talk a bit more about that later. So anyway, ever since then, I have to admit I'm back in love. I love Magento again, and I'm very happy about it. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with Hyvä since then, and I'm just getting more and more excited. Now I have to admit something here. I am kind of biased. I have joined Hyvä as a partner in the company. So now it's Willem and me working together on this. So I really want you to join the Hyvä bandwagon and jump on board and start doing Hyvä for all new projects. And that might be conflicting with trying to give you an objective perspective of a developer. That said, I would never have joined Hyvä if I wasn't really convinced that this is the best possible front-end solution for Magento. It just makes so much sense. Anyway, now that I've talked a little bit about, that I really want you to join Hyvä, now I can take this hat off and put on my developer hat and explain a little bit about Hyvä from my perspective as a developer, somewhat more objectively, so that if you ever need to make a choice whether to build on Hyvä or Luma or something else like PWA Studio, you can make a informed decision, right? If you get that value out of it, great. If you get excited about Hyvä and start using Hyvä, even better. Yeah, anyway, here we go. So first of all, if you haven't heard about Hyvä or looked at it, I want to give a quick introduction what it is. So Hyvä is a brand new front-end theme for Magento 2, but it's not a theme like you know it. The claim of Hyvä is that it provides the best developer experience, so nothing like Luma, right? The best performance and the best time to market, which is quite significant. So it's a theme, but it's not like any Magento theme that you know. It replaces everything about the front end that is outdated. So what are the things that are outdated about the Magento front end? Well, first of all, there's less. It already was outdated when Magento 2 was released. Then we have require.js, jQuery, knockout, underscore, right? Everything that was used to build the Magento UI components. So all of that is gone in the Magento front end. It's still there in the admin area, but on the front end, none of that is left. And a lot of those technologies already were kind of dated in 2015. By now, they're kind of ancient. And just being old is not bad. If they were good, that would be great. However, they are actively hurting the Google's ranking of merchants. Also, they're hurting merchants because they make front-end builds a lot more expensive and complex than they need to be. And they're hurting even more because it requires a lot of additional work during the deployment. So the deployments are slower. Learning this complex stack takes a lot of time. So onboarding new front-end developers isn't that easy. All this front-end complexity leads to a lot of money being paid, actually, in the past, quite of that to people like me. I shouldn't be complaining here, but trying to optimize a Magento 2 front end and making it perform well, also not just from the customer's eyes, but also through the eyes of Google, that, I spend weeks doing that. So that's basically wasted performance optimization if you already start with something performant. So Hyvä is built on HTML5, Tailwind CSS, and Alpine. And that's it. So it's a very clean, lean, mean stack. And the result is it's super fast. It is a commercial product. So a license costs 1,000 euros. And that might seem a bit steep at first, but it's not just a usual theme. So it's not really possible to compare it to any other offering of Magento themes that you might be familiar with, because you get so much more than just a theme for these 1,000 euros, right? Also, I actually believe it's good it's a commercial offering, because this means this is a product that is being actively developed. It's backed by a commercial company. So there's vendor support. There's long-term support. It's not some hobby project that will be abandoned when the creator kind of moves on, right? It's a real product with vendor backing. So usually that leads merchants to have a lot more trust in it compared to just some random repository on GitHub. Also, these 1,000 euros give access to the whole Hyvä ecosystem. There's a community. The community mainly is in form of a Slack channel, a private Slack, and their questions can be asked, code can be shared. There's a lot of documentation that you get access to the GitLab source code, to all the modules and the themes. All the support is there through private chat, public chat in that Slack. All the upgrades are free. So this license gives you lifelong upgrades. And also you get access to all the compatibility modules. And I'll talk more about those shortly too. Okay, so that's Hyvä. Now, as a backend developer, how was it for me getting started with Hyvä? So I do know JavaScript, but I really ain't very good in regards to CSS installing. I can create functionality, but I mainly work on the backend. Okay, so starting from there, which is pretty typical for Magento developers, I guess. How was it getting into Tailwind? So first of all the styling is done with Tailwind CSS. Tailwind CSS is a new utility CSS framework. It was released not too long ago, but it's really taken the web and storm. It's being used in so many places. And there are so many products built on top of it already. So to be honest, it's a bit like CSS. So if you know CSS, you'll be right at home. There's great documentation, and it's actually kind of fun. I learned a lot. So when I started out, I was a total noob in regards to CSS. Now I feel a lot more confident, and I'm getting a lot quicker styling things. And again, there's a lot of tooling built around Tailwind CSS. So there's IDE plugins for the JetBrains stuff like PHP-Storm, WebStorm, but also VS Code, of course. It works extremely well with the Chrome dev tools. There are CLI tools, browser plugins, etc. So it's really good, great support. And then the next part of the Hyvä front-end stack is Alpine.js. So how was it getting started with Alpine.js? Well, it's back then, there was only Alpine version 2. Now we have Alpine version 3, which isn't in Hyvä just yet, but it's getting there. So Alpine version 2 didn't have its own website. It just was a website repository, and it's a very thin, lightweight JavaScript wrapper around vanilla JavaScript that makes it a bit easier working with the DOM, and the syntax is very close to Vue.js, but it doesn't use a virtual DOM, which makes it a lot more lightweight. So reading the documentation, which was just the README on the repository, took me maybe an hour. And then I started working with it, and after an hour, I felt very at home in it. It's so lightweight and small, there isn't really a lot to learn. You'll get right in and feel very comfortable if you know a little bit of JavaScript. Knowing JavaScript is kind of helpful, especially because in Hyvä, we use, besides Alpine.js, we use quite a bit of native JavaScript. So just plain JavaScript, because the browser APIs of modern browsers are very capable of doing almost anything. And that's the reason why we were able to drop all those additional libraries, simply because they're no longer needed. We don't need jQuery because browsers can do all that. And JavaScript can do all that very, very comfortably without jQuery. So if you're used to jQuery, it's basically just learning the modern native JavaScript equivalent, and then a little bit of Alpine.js. All right. So how does my day-to-day work look like? Well, most of my work so far has been focused on third-party modules. Now, the biggest strength, or maybe let's say one of the biggest strengths of Magento is the module third-party ecosystem, right? So there are vendors like Fuman and MSD and so many others. They all create modules and sell them commercially, but they also are a lot of free modules. And some of them are sold through the Magento marketplace, but many more are available for free through other channels like Composer or GitHub, right? All these modules make our life as developers a lot easier. Of course, it's possible to go over the top with modules, and not all modules are great, but to be honest, we all use modules, I guess, in the sites we build. So, of course, these modules, the front-end parts, they are built based on Luma. So they use require.js and less and all those things, right? So that's a problem. Out of the box, the front-end parts won't work in Hyvä. So the solution to this problem is a concept called compatibility modules. A compatibility module is a compatibility module. For short, we always just say compat module. So I might as well do that right now. It's easier to say. So a compat module provides the templates that are Hyvä compatible. Everything else is just the regular module. So it's an additional module that gets installed together with the regular original module, and it just replaces those templates on the front end. Now, I looked at some statistics from hosters that they were kind enough to share that are specialized on Magento, and it turns out there are a lot of very common modules that are used on most websites, right? On most Magento instances. And instead of everybody recreating the same compatibility modules, the idea here is that once a compatibility module is, a compat module is created, why don't we share it between each other, right? We don't have to replicate the same effort again and again and again. So Hyvä has this thing called a compatibility module tracker. It's a GitLab repository, and every issue represents a module. So anybody with a Hyvä license can create new issues. It's actually public to view it, but creating issues, basically creating module requests, compatibility module requests, that can be done by anybody with a Hyvä license. And if somebody is working on such a module, they can check, hey, is somebody else maybe already working on the same module? And then they could collaborate. Or maybe it's already done, right? So here's the column with a publish tag. And if a module is listed there, that's great. You can just use that module together with the existing compatibility module. And some modules work out of the box. More and more extension vendors have started creating compatibility modules out of the box, or even making their modules Hyvä compatible without an additional compatibility module. So those are listed right here under compatible. Right, so you can basically get an impression of where each module is currently, and that's great. If you want to create your own compatibility module, have a look in here first, so you know there's not work already ongoing if needed. Now, what does it mean to create a compatibility module? Oh, just a moment, there was a chat message here. Is there something important? 10 minutes left. Ah, dang, okay. That was, yeah, just about now, I guess. Okay, so what this requires is creating the compatibility module, and we have scripts to generate those. So you get a little stub repository in the compatibility module GitLab organization. You get maintainer access to it, and then you can start working with it. So that usually means I first copy over all the PHTML templates from the original module into the Compat module. And then I inline all the data made init, Magento init, and inline require.js calls. I usually inline the .html templates and use server-side rendering there. So far, I haven't found one place where that wasn't possible. And then finally, of course, I also have to port the Magento JavaScript. So jQuery and require.js mainly, some knockout sometimes. I have to port that to native JavaScript and Alpine. And that's the main work. And then finally, I can also style the templates so they look okay in Hyvä. There's a very super helpful browser plugin called Windy. It's by Beyond Code. It costs 50 euros, but it makes this porting of themes a lot easier. If you start building the Compat modules, ping me in the Slack and I'll be very happy to show you how it works. It saves a lot of time. There's a lot of documentation about creating compatibility modules too, and you can get access to that with a Hyvä license. There's infrastructure like a module that allows you to just copy the templates over into a compatibility module, and they will be used automatically for Hyvä themes. So you don't have to create layout XML to replace the templates at all. So yeah, if you need any support, just ask in Slack, and we'll do our best to help. So theming is the next part, of course, of working with Hyvä. Styling with Tailwind CSS, I guess it's true for other utility CSS frameworks too, but I only have real experience with Tailwind CSS, and it is really fast, not the least because there are so many examples how to use Tailwind CSS on the internet. So many resources and videos, so it's very easy to get started. And there's one more thing that is used a lot with Hyvä, and those are Magento PHP view models. They really take center stage. In Hyvä, there is a view model registry in the variable view models automatically assigned to any template that gets rendered, any PHTML template. And using this view model registry, it's possible to instantiate any view model. So it's not necessary to inject it into the block using layout XML. That removes a lot of boilerplate. So we just get the view models we need, and that's how we can get access to any business logic we might need or any data we might need when we want to render it in a template. And this approach has a number of benefits. So first of all, templates are more encapsulated, so they're not as dependent on the block hierarchy in the layout XML. We can take a template and use it in a different location on the page, and it usually just works. So the view models are composable. Quite often there are multiple view models being used, and the output of one might be used with another, and it works quite well. With Hyvä also, view models have the option to provide cache tags for a page when it's cached in the full page cache. That's something that's not possible in Luma. That's a Hyvä feature. And so if you load products or get the current product on a page, it will automatically have the correct cache tag set. So the roadmap currently is we're integrating Alpine version 3. The Tailwind JIT compiler will be integrated. We'll be covering more Adobe Commerce features. Open source is feature complete coverage. There are some features of Adobe Commerce that are covered. For example, the page builder, which is now part of Magento open source as well. Thankfully, that's awesome. That already works with Hyvä. It's great. We will be creating more compatibility modules, and the next product is being developed, which is a Hyvä UI component library. So that will be a collection of templates which you can take and just use in Hyvä, menus, product presentations, footers, headers, search bars, navigation, all these different aspects of a site in different themes. And they will be ready to be used. It's just a PHTML template and maybe a few static assets in some cases. So that will become a new product. All the current license holders of Hyvä licenses will have access to it. And we are actually releasing the first UI component of this upcoming library tomorrow, which will be a menu. So that's very exciting. And we have a lot more planned, which I can't talk about yet. So just stay there. We're moving very fast. The results speak for themselves. There are significantly shorter project build times. Sometimes it's too good to believe, but again and again, that's what I hear as feedback from our customers. So everybody who has created a Hyvä project says they will use the Hyvä for all future projects. So that's very encouraging and gives me very high confidence we're actually on the right track there. Plus, it's a lot more fun working with Hyvä compared to the other front-end stacks. And out of the box, the results are amazing. So rather than starting with a solution that is kind of in the mid-range, 50, 60% of the results on Google Lighthouse, and then trying to optimize it and putting in a lot of work. And as soon as you start customizing it, it goes way down, right? It's so much easier starting with something that starts right at the maximum capabilities there. And then, you know, of course, if you start customizing a site, it's possible that these values change, but it's a lot easier optimizing back to where it was before, rather than starting way down there and then trying to reach a good score. So thank you very much. If there's time, if there are questions, yeah, there still should be a little bit of time, then please let me know. Otherwise, please feel free to ping me on Twitter or on Hyvä. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Mr. Vinai Kopp, for the very clarifying. That was no doubt very clarifying, coming from a person who's most passionate about Hyvä as well. And that, I think the love story you mentioned in the beginning was particularly refreshing about your journey with Magento since 2008 until now, with all the ups and downs. I think, yeah, we do still have about a few minutes to talk and shed more light on the topic, or more about you as well. I think I'd like to take this opportunity to also ask, you've been working with Magento for many years now, and would you have a specific standpoint about how the evolution has been, and what are you excited to anticipate in the future with Magento?
Yes. So what I'm excited about is that after these few years, Magento 2 has matured. So it's finally a mature, stable platform. Because to be honest, when it was released, it wasn't quite ready, right? So that changed. The last couple of upgrades have been so much easier compared to the first upgrades. So that's great. And I really believe that Magento could be now standing right at the beginning. So the story of Magento is only just beginning now. And that's super exciting to me. I'm really happy I haven't just jumped boat and started working somewhere else, but that I'm in this good place right now. And I think there will be a lot more innovations coming, not just from Adobe, who are doing a good job with things like Page Builder and product recommendations and many other services. But a lot of these services are mainly focused for very enterprise customers, right? This whole idea of composable commerce. But Magento's strength traditionally has been its flexibility, and that it could be used in so many different scenarios. So this strength is something that I think should be preserved and will carry it way into the future, because it's still, given the size of its community, And given its flexibility and maturity, it's an awesome platform to build on, especially if those parts that aren't ideal are replaced by something better, like Hyvä right now, right? And
Exactly.
keeping the good parts, keeping what's good, and just replacing the bad parts. And that's what I like. So that's also, by the way, why I decided not to go with PWA, because that would be throwing away a lot of what is good about it. So there's that.
Okay, well, I definitely came to the right person with the right question. Thank you for very clarifying that. And I think I'm personally also very excited to how Magento is going to be like and what sort of topics and new innovations we're going to be discussing next year in other Meet Magento conferences as well. So thank you once again, Mr. Vinai Kopp, for all the insights you have shared and extending discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and
All right.
everything. Bye.
Okay, for everyone who still wants to ask questions or wants to get in touch with Mr. Vinai Kopp, please make sure to contact him through his social links that he also already shared previously through Twitter, or perhaps also visit the Hyvä website to get to know the product better.